Welcome to Women Talking Soccer. I'm your host, Carrie Taylor. The goal of this podcast is to amplify the voices of all women who love the beautiful game. Whether you're on the field, cheering from the stands, work in the business, want to be in the business, or are a passionate change maker, your voice is important. This podcast is presented by Women in Soccer. Women in Soccer is a network of women and allies involved in our favorite sport. You can join Women in Soccer for free online at womeninsoccer.org. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Women Talking Soccer. Today, we have a wonderful guest. Hayley Carter is joining the Women Talking Soccer podcast to give us all of her knowledge and experience and to tell her story to share with all our listeners today. So, Hayley, thanks for coming on and giving us some time. I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Yeah.
If you could share like what you're doing now and just like a brief summary about yourself, and then we can dive into all the cool stuff that you've done in your life.
Yeah. Well, thanks first for having me on. I appreciate your guest list and your podcast. I'm pretty honored to be included in the list of really kick-ass people that you've had on. So a little. So I currently work with Lisa Cole in Antigua, Barbuda. Basically with whatever assistance she needs, whether it's coming in as a goalkeeper coach or just providing administrative support. Like I'm kind of the jack of all trades, expert of none, plug and play. And then also I serve currently as the chair of the Women Coaches Advocacy Group for United Soccer Coaches. So yeah, so that's kind of currently what I'm doing. As far as my background is concerned, I truly lived in my 20s. I at the Naval Academy, close to 8 years in the Marine Corps as a logistics officer. Continued to play while I was in. I played all armed forces in between. And then when I got out, I started playing professionally for the Houston Dash. And I got into coaching while I was still assistant at universities, and then got into the international coaching game in 2016, which was actually my pro. So I kind of managed like transitioning out of playing and into coaching at the international level. Worked with Afghanistan for 2.5 years, 3 years. And then was really fortunate to be able to get to transition over and to work with Antigua. I was really fortunate that Lisa Cole brought me in. Just with the timing, I'm sure you've heard about, everything that happened with the Afghanistan women's national team. Yeah. And it was a really emotional year. And coming out of that, like I really wanted to get back in the game, but it was tough. It was a tough year. So the timing, I've been pretty fortunate for sure.
Yeah, you've definitely done a lot over the years with your experience. And, how did being in the military and how did that shape you as a coach or you as a soccer player? Because not many women can say like they've been in the military and have done coaching and everything. So I'm interested to know how you weave that into, your coaching and some of the stuff that you're doing now.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It's a really good question, Carrie. And I think in the military, transitioning from that to playing, I'd been playing the whole time I was in the military. And of course, in the Marine Corps, your identity is a Marine, right? Like and so I was really fortunate to get to continue on as a footballer, like throughout that time in my life. But what was interesting to me, the change, I think, and it's something that has occurred even more recently, probably in the last 2 years, maybe. In the Marine Corps, you sort of learn this leadership style. When I was in, I think it's evolving. It's evolved quite a bit. So, it was like you never let your Marine see you have a bad day. Mm-hmm. Like that's just it doesn't help. You don't. And I really brought that to my life as a player and a coach when I was first starting. Like this sort of very stoic approach to things. And, I may suck at fitness, but you're not going to, it's not going to come to the worst thing I've ever done. So, just like one foot in front of the other, and you don't really share when you're struggling with things.
Mm-hmm.
I went and gave a talk to the Penn State women's soccer team, and I talked about that. Not long after I was doing that, kind of sort of at the same time, I was busy dealing with this stuff that was happening with Afghanistan, and that was some really okay. And what I learned through that experience is the most authentic leader, the most authentic coach that you can be is to be vulnerable and to, recognize players are human and flawed, and your teammates are human and flawed, and to not be afraid to explain, or if you're struggling, to ask for help. So it's interesting that you should ask that question, because I it's almost like a polar opposite. I think I've gone kind of soft, as it were, since I left the Marine Corps, as far as just communicating and connecting with people on that sort of interpersonal level. So I've been really fortunate. And I told Erica, like, I felt really bad because I went into this conversation with them, and I think vulnerability was something they were working on themselves. And I'm over here like, oh yeah, like, show up, don't let your teammates see you have a bad day, like, be shit days every now and then. And that's what makes us human and real. So I've kind of departed, still very much into servant leadership, but how I navigate hardship and adversity is quite a bit different. Like, I let people.
Yeah. And that's power. That's really powerful. And, I think as women, there's so few women that are in the game. And like, as women, we often don't want to show our vulnerability because, that's a female quality, and we have to, be strong and be tough and show that we can.
It's a weakness.
Yeah. But then we end up being somebody that we're not. And then that's no good either. So yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing how that, how you've kind of grown and developed and been able to show your humanness, which is powerful. And I'm sure your players, have really attached to that and benefited from that for sure. So chat with us about.
I hope so.
Of course,
I know that I know that I have for sure.
Yeah, of course they benefited from it. We make mistakes and then we grow, and then we become awesome coaches, even awesomer coaches as we get older. That's how I look at it. Tell us a little bit. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about playing in the NWSL for the Dash, and just what that experience was like, and how you see the NWSL growing, or wishes for growth.
It's so I played in 14, 15, and the league has like markedly improved since then on so many different levels. But I think it still has a long way to go on other levels. So pay for players has gone up significantly. I remember in my first season, I was fortunate because I have a full-time job, and which was an unbelievably difficult schedule to manage for 3 years. But I didn't have to worry about like my car payment or my mortgage or, all of these other things that are traditional expenses for, and I was doing the research on, what the like income, for like state aid and assistance, like food stamps, basically. And the reality is women soccer players were making low enough that they would have qualified for food stamps. which was just absurd to me, considering the amount of time that we were all having to dedicate to what we. And it's improved some, and I think that the more we have the sort of equal play, equal pay argument, there is a significant disparity between U.S. women's national team players and everybody else in the league. But I think that as standard moves up for them, it's inherently moving up for everyone else as well. Not as quickly as I would like, but it's certainly changing. I also that clubs that are getting involved are really serious about player welfare, not just from a pay standpoint, but making people valued, whether it's housing or player safety, having cars and vehicles and all the support that you need to really truly. And then I think, the for me playing, like I said, I was really fortunate because I had a full-time job, stressors. But I can appreciate the fact that the league has finally gotten around to expanding the roster size. You don't have paid amateur non for replacement players and stuff like we've grown beyond that. But that being said, I still think there's quite a bit to be improved, right? We still talk about women coaches in the league. Like
one.
We've got one
yeah.
coach and that's just it's not good enough. We're not seeing women of color, we're not seeing minority, we're not seeing administration and front offices and the technical staff, and I think that really has to change, right? And I'm usually the one screaming on Twitter every time a team hires a male coach, and even men that have been hired. Christy Holly, friend, I love Christy. I think he's a great coach. But I've kind of taken up the torch of why the hell are we not hiring more women coaches, qualified women coaches? Why are they not being hired?
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that, staking that claim, and then I also think too, just from a marketing and sponsorship standpoint, we saw in the NWSL Challenge Cup this year, sponsorship was huge. Budweiser and all of these organizations and companies that are coming on board, the power to market the women's game is, even while we're dealing with COVID and things are tight and people are struggling, there's still a serious interest to invest in the women's game. So I think we're seeing many people struggle really but at the pro level, I think women's football is going to continue to become I think we're picking up momentum, to be honest. And so I'm happy to see that. But yeah, I do think that the league still has room to improve as far as, not just player welfare, but, what are we doing for coaches and how are we addressing coaches and giving opportunities for women coaches and what does that look like? And I can appreciate that there are organizations that are going out trying to bring on women as assistants. We've got Twyla in Houston. Kansas City just hired Allie Lipsher. That's a big time get. To have a woman goalkeeper coach in the league is huge. But I just think at what point are we not relying on male allies where we need to? Are we being hired into those positions? So then it's our job to reach back and to offer opportunities for other women. So I appreciate, all of the men head coaches that are going out of their way, and even, GMs and front office staff that are doing the work to try and empower women. I just think they're faster.
Yeah, you bring up a great point there.
There's a long drawn out answer of your question about my experience.
Oh, no, don't. This is what this podcast is about, is we want to hear about your thoughts and who you are. So never feel long and drawn out. I just want to say I agree with you 100% about, I feel like we've missed some opportunities recently with, the Salt Lake franchise moving to Kansas City, and Orlando was, looking to hire a GM, and nothing against the men, but women are getting the ancillary positions and not necessarily being given opportunities to get experience. And I had Elise LaHue
Yeah.
on a little bit ago, and she's done a lot within Sky Blue to hire women, but even then Elise is like, well, but we're not diverse in skin color. Like, I need to do a better job. And it's one thing to
Yeah.
it's one thing to say, yes, women's soccer is growing, it's great, and we're doing wonderful things. However, you still have to be super intentional and look at every hire, look at every decision to make sure, like, are we offering an opportunity for a woman? I was on a call the other day, and somebody was talking about doing a video, and they're like, oh, I have this great man to do it. And I said, excuse me, it's a women's soccer video. Like, can't you have a woman's voice be the voiceover? And everyone kind of sat there and looked at me, and they went, oh, that's a good idea.
Yes.
But it's like, even those little things, we have to,
yes, it's like revolutionary.
yeah. But we have,
it's not pretty simple stuff.
Yeah, we just have to think and slow down and be super intentional. And again, I think change is happening. It's just, will it happen in our lifetimes? Like, enough change happened in our lifetimes, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Talk to.
Yeah. And I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
No, you go. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, Elise makes a really great point, because she's in a position to make hiring decisions, right? So, and that's really what we need. I think a lot of the difficulty that we're facing is that those that are in the position to hire, unfortunately, are hiring based system, or they knew a guy who coached their daughters at some point, versus genuinely looking at the market and what potential talent is out there. And for me, that's the most off. They get the experience. They're doing the right things. They're getting their licensing. They're some of the greatest coaches in the world, and they're not being taken seriously. And that's incredibly demoralizing. It's not only is it demoralizing to that coach, but it sends a signal to every other young woman coach who's coming up. Like, do I really want to make this a career? Do I really want to get this ceiling? And I'm seeing other women who are legends in the game, who we look up to, and they're hitting a ceiling and they're not able to get past it. So what does that mean for me? And so that to me is the more concerning part, because it's creating this sort of legacy of holding women back, because inherently women are like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I've seen plenty of really fantastic women coaches leave the game for that reason, because they just don't see it going anywhere. And it's hard, right? It's hard to be a coach. It's hard to survive on that and pay your dues, and then to see, like I said, legends in the game not getting opportunities is just, it's a buzzkill, to say the least.
Yeah. And that's a good kind of segue into talking about, like, what women in soccer is as a group. And we're happy to have you on board as I think you're an expert or a founding member or something like that. I don't know your official title, but but Women in Soccer is happy to have you and your knowledge. And within the Women in Soccer platform, I think, to me, the thing that speaks to me the most is connecting all of us that are doing these amazing things, like, in our own communities, in these little silos. And now finally, we get to know each other, and we can lean on each other, and we can mentor each other and pick each other up, or, say, oh, hey, I know somebody would be great for this job, and really connect as women. Because I know early in my career, I wasn't very nice to the other women that were out there, because we were all competing for, like, a handful of jobs. And so
we are kind of bitchy.
Yeah, like, it's true. And I look back and I'm like, oh, wow, like, that's not a way to be an advocate for women. Like, why were you that way? But now I've evolved, and in my older age, we all need to work together. That's what women in soccer is about. So for anyone that hasn't signed up yet, womeninsoccer.org.
Yeah, I think get in.
Yes, it's a free platform, great content. I listened to Brandy Chastain and Becky Burley the other night talking about the DISC personality test.
Good.
That was
Brandy's Corner.
yeah. And is it going to be once? I think it's once a month on Wednesdays. Yeah, check it out. I was inspired. I learned a lot. It was really great to connect with people and hear the expertise that Becky and Brandy bring to the stage. So more cool things to come for sure. Hayley, talk to our listeners about you mentioned the 2 national teams that you've worked with. Is that like where you feel your niche is now? And is that something, that would you ever consider being a head coach of a national team someday?
I kind of like being the assistant, to be honest with you. And gets all the glory, take all the shit. That's not why. I really it's interesting. I'm like a part coach. I don't do this full time. Like just thing. I still have a full-time job. And what I have found is that I really enjoy supporting head coaches. Like, with Afghanistan, we had Kelly Lindsay, and we had a phenomenal. Everybody goes at the door, and we were all fighting together as a team. And we had an all-female staff aside from John DeWitt, our sports performance guy. I'd worked with him in the dash. And it was great to bring him around and have him run fitness for other people and not me.
I bet.
It was awesome. Like just being able to play a supporting role, thinking about things that a head coach needs before the head coach realizes that they need it. And, making sure that your staff has, everything that they need to be successful. And one of the other things that I really appreciated about that staff was that, like I said, nobody was a freak up something that if somebody else couldn't get it done. Mm-hmm. So, I did laundry and I travel and I talked to parents about visas and, we worked with our athletic trainer and nobody was afraid to pick up cones. Like it was very a sort of team responsibility and we all took everything that needed to get done. We took it on as a group. With Lisa and Antigua is a very similar way, right? Like it doesn't matter who technically some responsibility might fall to. The key is to just done. And for me, it's about like empowering other women to be successful, right? And I like that. I like that role where I do what I can to empower Lisa to be successful. I did what I could to empower Kelly to be successful. And I like that role. It's a good fit for me. And I don't know. I think, there's some people out there, I guess I'm one of them. That's okay being a perpetual assistant. I just really, it's fun to collaborate. And it's especially fun when you're working with a head coach who you can have disagreements with and you can have like healthy discussion and then you move on. And ultimately it's the head coach and it's their decision and you support it, but it's great environment where you can have that sort of back and forth and dialogue. And I've also been really fortunate because Kelly and Lisa themselves, I'm very different from both of them. So we've got, we always had this sort of good cop, bad cop, strengths versus weaknesses that paired together.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I enjoy it.
No, that's great. I wonder, have you ever looked at your guys' DISC personalities and how those fit together? That would be an interesting thing to do within the coaching staff.
Yeah, I actually I went to it's funny you say that. I went to a True North sports event with Celia and Becky, and
Mm-hmm.
they ran it like, and at the time it was really funny, like all of the coaches comparing what they were. But um yeah, I've been really fortunate that I've paired myself with opposite personalities. um
I think
that
it's healthier
yeah, it's
that
worked
way.
out that we all tend to be, but also understanding and flexible and willing to learn and
Yeah.
humble. I hope. I try to be anyway.
That's great. Can you talk about what you do with the Women's Advocacy Committee with United Soccer Coaches a little bit and how people can get involved with that?
Yeah. So advocacy is one of the main pillars of United Soccer Coaches, and I think throughout 20 COVID and everything that coaches everywhere were dealing with, and the game was dealing with, it's become even more critical. Soccer coaches. We're very fortunate. We have an advocacy council that's made up of multiple diversity groups, and then that represent play. So, we have the Black Coaches Advocacy Group, we have the Latin Coaches Advocacy Group, Native American, LGBT and allies, disability and allies. And then we've got the youth side, the high school side, the college side, and we're hope point soon. But it enables all of us to really come into a room and share and have hard conversations, and truly about things that are happening in the world, things that are happening in the game and in our communities, to try and empower each other as coaches so that all the diverse minorities, women of color, coaches of color, are getting an opportunity to be empowered and to be heard. Um, and within the women coaches advocacy group, obviously, we are interested, and but also coaches of the women's game. And I think that I don't think that there is this misconception that the women's group is like anti-men and super hyper feminist, and whereas our priority is to empower, we care about the women's game. And there are many, many, many male allies, and G at A&M. There's a lot of men coaches out there who do really great things for the women's side. Kadani is another example. Talk
Yeah.
about, and so it's important that we are engaging those folks as well, because it's like we talked about, and like Jen opportunities under Kadani. Now she's at Michigan. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
these men are going out of their way to empower women. Of legends, right? Um, for us, it's about giving women an opportunity to share and celebrate things that are happening in the women's game, things that women coaches are doing, making sure that we're like enhancing membership
Mm-hmm.
soccer coaches. So, we're getting content out there that's relevant to members, and making sure members are included in creating. And then also trying to develop pathways, whether it's through like coach educating, becoming part of the United Soccer Coaches Academy staff, or just trying to navigate your own coach education pathway, and what does that look like, and trying to make sure that we've got a network of sort of senior women's game available to up and coming coaches, or coaches who might be transitioning in their careers,
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what that next step is going to be. So, whether it's participating as mentors in the United Soccer Coaches 30 Under 30 program, or, creating recently, we just got started with a initiative, which Amanda Evans was hyped to start. We've got a Google Classroom, so it's for like all the moms, future moms, women that are considering to be moms,
Hmm.
moms to be, just to get in a place where we can share things that are happening on the field, off the field, how they're navigating work-life balance and what that looks like, I totally get that. I've got a 9-year-old and parenting is hard stuff sometimes. So, and an opportunity just to be able to connect, similar to what women in soccer is doing, right? Whether it's on the Slack channels or whether it's the content that's being produced, it's the same sort of concept. Like, how can we uplift for all women, of all gender, like trans women, cis women, straight women, women of color, like every woman in the game at every position, whether it's front office or coaching or players or I feel like we talk about we're kind of catty with each other when we're younger, but the reality is if we don't start helping each other, nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah,
and so that's sort of where I've taken my life as purpose is concerned.
Yeah, no, that's great. I probably need to get involved and add that to my something on my list of something else to do, but it is definitely important.
And don't
And
worry, I can find something for you to do.
Okay, well, you can send me some information if you need help on anything. So I think mentoring and talking to
And if you are interested in joining, you can actually check out Advocacy at the United Soccer Coaches webpage.
Okay.
You can also reach out to Women Coaches Advocacy Group, all one word, at gmail.com.
Women Coaches Advocacy Group at Gmail. All right.
Group.
All right.
Yeah, it was very original.
Hey, at least you know what you're signing up for when you type in the email. No, I mean, you bring up a lot of great points.
True.
And, I think where you mentioned, and women getting together, talking about like how to navigate raising children and coaching in this, because, we keep asking the same questions, like how do we get more women involved in the game, or how do we keep women involved in the game? And we have to actively do those things. We can't just keep having the same conversations year after year after year. And you're right, we women have to take that ownership along with male allies who support us and who have helped us in our careers. Like I didn't have a female coach until I was in college, and a lot of my great mentors are male coaches who I've really relied on over the years. So it's not anti-man in any way. None of these organizations are that we've mentioned. It's how do we just focus and amplify women with the help of strong, positive male allies. Couple more questions, and then I'll let you get back. So I heard you like got a law degree or something recently. Like what's going on with that? Like how do you have how do you have time for all that stuff?
Yeah, I went to law school.
Oh, kudos.
Yeah.
Kudos to
I
you.
did. I went to law.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
That's an amazing accomplishment there. I had to give you the shout out on that one.
I just need to take the bar.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. Well, good
Thanks.
luck.
I appreciate it. People why I decided to do that. And there's two reasons. And one of them is pretty petty, but I feel like you'll appreciate it. So the first reason is, because I was in the Marine Corps, I had my GI Bill, and I actually I got my MBA when I was still in the Marine Corps. So when I got out, I had my GI Bill left.
Okay.
And it drives me totally bonkers when veterans don't use their benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a veteran and you're listening to this and you haven't used your benefits, shame on you. I thought, well, I don't grit. So one day I woke up and took the LSAT and wound up in law school and was like, what am I doing here? But the other reason is because I work in business, and specifically, and it's really nerdy, so I'm not, but I was a logistics officer in the Marine Corps, and now I run procurement for a company that's actually a Danish-owned company. I work for the North American subsidiary. So I'm in procurement, which means I'm like a professional buyer of things.
Okay.
Right. So I negotiate like it's going on style. And I have sat in meetings. I have had lawyers talk to me like I'm a complete moron.
Mm-hmm.
And I told myself I would be sitting in a meeting because I don't really advertise it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at my Twitter bio, you can see I went to law school, but at work, right, you know, I'm not serving in house counsel, so I like nobody really knows unless you know me. And I told myself that one day I'd be sitting in one of those meetings and some lawyer would be condescending to me, and I was going to respond back and be like, "Yeah, I know, I went to law school too." Zing.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's petty, but
But you know what?
true.
I understand it completely. That's like
I'm not going to be talking to you like that.
exactly. Like that's it. Don't mansplain me or lawyer splain me. Just speak to me like I'm an
Exactly.
equal
Don't lawyer explain.
professional. Equal
And
professional.
it's not an accident.
Yeah. Well, kudos to
I would
you.
do that. So it's
Yeah,
yeah.
kudos to you. That's a tough thing, and that's amazing. So congratulations on that. Um, three quick questions that
Thanks. I plan on using it.
good. Yes.
That's sort of what I'm going to do with it.
Three quick questions that I ask all my guests. First one is, do you have any specific quote or like life mantra that gets you out of bed or that you turn to in times of challenges or anything? Just like a favorite saying, quote.
I do. I do. So my favorite quote, I actually have it tattooed on. That's how
Oh,
much it means to me.
all right. I love it.
It says, yeah, I know. It says it says to you and your kind, much has been given, and from you much should be expected.
Ooh.
And it's actually it's a Roosevelt quote, and I'm sure you've heard The Man in the Arena.
Yes.
If you've read Brene Brown,
yes,
so that, that is from a speech, Citizenship and Republic.
Okay.
And that quote is actually from that speech. And if you've never read the whole speech and you've only heard The Man in the Arena portion, I would recommend that I would encourage you to read the entire speech because it's really.
All right. I'm writing that down. That's great. And that's really powerful. When you started rolling up your sleeve, yep. I was like, all right. And that's amazing.
I do. I mean, I live by it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Second question, favorite book or anything that you've read recently that you want to recommend to people that is like a must read? It could be books. I read a lot of books, so I have a lot, but.
So I'm going to recommend one that it's very recent for me. We, at my work, established, this won't be very surprising to you, but I recently helped establish a women's initiative at work called Women at Work. That's what we're calling it.
Of course you did.
And we process of working out. Yeah, right. Surprise, shocker. And we're in the process of working out for our Q1 like event. And one of the topics that's come up, and this is relevant in the as well, is how can men be effective allies of women? And I read this book a few years ago called Athena Rising.
Okay.
And by Dave Brad Johnson, two incredible PhDs, Navy veterans. Brad is actually a professor at the Naval Academy in the leadership department. And then Dave works at the Naval War College. They literally wrote the book on it. And so I reached out to them recently, and we're fortunate because I was able to secure them to come and do a presentation for my company. But I would definitely recommend that book because I think it's very timely. Especially when we start talking about, I'm like you, I didn't have a female coach until I got to college. And then, I played for Karen at Navy. And even later, after Karen, I never had a female coach. Mm-hmm. And so my mentors in the game were men. And I'm really thankful for them. And I think we're in a situation where the reality is like men are going to be mentoring women, and they should. And I think as women, we should be open to mm-hmm. But if you're not sure how to do it, whether as a woman mentee or as a male mentor, how to navigate that relationship, it is a phenomenal book just explaining what the benefits are from having male mentors and how male mentors can effectively, it's like you talked about, amplify or uplift women that are sort of their wing, if you will.
Well, I wrote it down.
Athena Rising.
It's
Final answer.
Well, I love it. I wrote it down. I'm going to order it. I've got like 4 or 5 books I need to read here from all the podcast guests. It's really awesome because no one's recommended the same book. And I love that. So I'm learning from everyone that comes on the show. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. That's
really good.
Yeah. Like shockingly, no one's repeated one. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is cool. Final question. Any words of wisdom, anything that you want to say to young women or women coming through the game? Any final advice? Just to wrap it up.
My biggest advice, especially true for younger women, because I think it changes a little bit as you get older, and I'll explain why. But my biggest advice would be to say yes. People will that you don't know what it's going to turn out like. You have no idea, but say yes. Afghanistan happened because my person from my last year of playing sponsored their kit and put me in touch with their program director. And I just kind of offhand was like, if you ever need any help, let me know. And then 2 weeks later, she calls me up. She's like, how serious were you about that? Yes, I want to get involved, And then crazy and incredible. And, say yes to opportunities that are given to you that turn out like it may not pay very much. It may not pay at all. Which I'm never a fan of, but the reality is young women out there and be willing to say yes. And then of course the flip side of that is at some point you reach the point which I'm reaching, and my intention for 2020 is to be more diligent in how I spend my time and who I spend my time with. So now in my career, I've kind of shifted focus where now I'm getting to the I have to work on no being a complete sentence, or admitting that I don't have time to take something on, or unless it's prioritize it. But I would say I've been able to reach that point, which I still struggle with, by the way. I'm terrible. I am saying no. But I think I've reached that point because when I was younger, I was so willing to say yes. And it just opened up so much for me. And I made friends and networks and connections that otherwise, I would have never had the opportunity to do those. Say yes and put up there and be afraid to fail, like not be afraid to fail. I remember the morning. So when I started playing for the Dash, Randy and I had been talking right after he was hired as we're preparing. And again, that was when we had limited roster. We had 2 goalkeepers at the time. You're going to need more than 2 goalkeepers going into a season. So Randy and I had been talking before the season, and he was like, yeah, just come to open trial. And I was living in Austin at the time. My parents were still in Houston. So I drove into Houston. And I remember the morning of open tryouts being like, I know that I had talked to Randy earlier and we'd like set all of this up, but there was still a part of me that was like too old for this. Like, am I living in a pipe dream? Like, and there was like a split second where I was like, I'm not getting out of bed and going to this.
Oh.
And then I was like, no. And I got a moment there where I was like, just scared of the unknown and what it would bring, and whether or not I could stick it out. And to be fair, I wasn't always good enough. Randy tried to cut me a couple of times and I was just like, whatever, I'll see you tomorrow. And I just kept showing up.
Gotta love that grit.
There's a little more to that, but yeah, so he kept me around for 3 seasons. So, but there was that moment. And I think if, I like to think I'm a pretty confident woman, and I feel good about the things that I've achieved, and I feel good about myself. So for me to have that moment, like, I think all of us have that moment at some point, and to work past that and like, screw it. You only live once,
Yeah, so. Hayley, absolutely. And, we've all had those moments where we question, can I do this? Am I good enough? And all of that. And like you said, you don't know until you try, and that's how you get experience. And, sometimes I think that's the biggest difference between men and women. Men sometimes, to me, could care less if they fail or not. And women are always like, oh, I don't tick this box, or, oh, I don't have this on my resume. And you're absolutely right. You just have to go for it.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing where you exactly a male coach is going to apply for a job no they have no business serving in, and a woman coach is going to be like, well, I only fit 8 out of the 10
Yeah.
criteria.
Yeah.
Now, girl, put your application in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Hayley, this
So,
has been great getting to know you better. And I can't wait till all the COVID stuff is over and we have a women in soccer like symposium or founders party or something. And I actually get to meet you in person, But I will reach out to the women's coaches advocacy group and sign up for something and get involved. I've been a member of United Soccer Coaches for a long time and I've never really taken a deep dive into getting involved. So I will say yes to something. I don't know what that will look like, but count me in.
we'll tag.
count me
figure
in.
it out. We'll find a role for you, I promise.
That sounds fantastic. So thanks again for sharing who you are, your expertise, and thanks for being a part of not only the podcast, but of Women in Soccer. So, keep doing great things. And I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carrie. It was a blast.